Story 1. I know a few people who are strongly against abortion on religious grounds and do not care about anything else except that he appointed justices to the Supreme Court who overturned Roe v. Wade. Everything else is collateral damage to them. They acknowledge it but do not care about it as much as saving the lives of the unborn. Story 2. I am not a conservative, but I will try to answer this with as much good faith as possible. I think that many conservatives ultimately view him as a blunt instrument to get legislation that aligns with their worldview. Things like protecting the sanctity of marriage, according to them, reducing access to objectionable sexual material, again, according to them, outlawing abortion, getting rid of affirmative action, protecting the Second Amendment. To clarify, I support protecting the Second Amendment, but I do not believe Democrats want to take our guns, and reducing immigration. We can call it racism if we like, but I think it is more subtle than that. Whether I agree with their perspectives or not, I believe many genuinely think abortion is murder, that being gay is a sin, or that taking on too many immigrants too quickly harms the country. They might also believe that the damage he is doing is temporary, but stacking the Supreme Court with conservative judges was worth using such a blunt instrument. Not sure if I even answered the question, so to clarify, reducing diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, reducing immigration, and returning to traditional sexual norms. From that lens, I believe he has succeeded in doing good things. Let me be clear, I vehemently disagree with many of the things I mentioned, and I do not think they are good things. However, if you have a certain worldview, I can certainly see you defining them as good. Just my 2 cents as a left-leaning person on Reddit. Story 3. I have a coworker who is Hispanic and is working on dual citizenship with Mexico because he does not trust that he will not be deported. He voted for Donald Trump, and when I asked him if he regretted his vote, he said no. He would vote the same way again because he wants abortion to be illegal. Story 4. This subreddit is a liberal echo chamber. If you want to see genuine responses, sort by controversial. Conservative views tend to get downvoted to oblivion for their opinions, even when the question is directed toward conservatives. Story 5. Given the situation, the attacks against Iran were likely the best course of action. I really dislike how he treats and interacts with our North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies, but he does get them to commit to increasing defense funding, which is massively important. The outcome is good, but the methods are bad and will have long-term negative consequences. There is a reason President Biden did not withdraw former President Trump's tariffs and restrictions on China. I would never say he does a lot of good things, but saying that every single one of his decisions is wrong is just wrong. Story 6. Everyone should be able to list a few positive achievements. Every conservative should be able to list a few accomplishments by Joseph Biden or Barack Obama. Otherwise, you are being blinded by identity politics. Story 7. My wife would not be alive had Donald Trump not passed legislation in his first term allowing expanded access to experimental drugs for those with no other choices. With any politician, it is not all good, but it is never all bad. Story 8. Deporting people here illegally, especially criminals from our communities. Fighting for fair trade deals for America. It is unclear why that is controversial or why previous administrations under Obama, Biden, Bush, and Clinton never prioritized renegotiating trade agreements to benefit America. Cutting wasteful government spending and reducing the number of unnecessary government employees. Clinton did this as a necessary measure from time to time to eliminate ineffective workers in any organization. Prioritizing law and order. While some may dislike the police, basic law enforcement presence reduces crime and improves life in the majority of communities across the country. Encouraging companies to bring jobs back to America. An increase in the price of goods is acceptable if it results in more jobs for Americans and legal immigrants striving to succeed in the country. It was misguided to accept the loss of American jobs to save money on consumer goods. Ending the debate on allowing men to compete in women's sports. Although it affects a small number, no girl should lose her competitive opportunity because of attempts to avoid offending transgender individuals. Halting these conversations can help the transgender community focus on gaining acceptance without distractions. This perspective from the political right is logical and understandable, even if there is not full agreement, as the success of these efforts will vary. Story 9. Removing suppressors from the National Firearms Act. Edit. Why the downvotes? Even European countries with strict gun control encourage people to use suppressors. All they do is reduce hearing damage. They do not turn you into John Wick. Story 10. He increased the child tax credit and also started $1,000 Trump accounts for babies born between 2025 and 2028. Story 11. Trump critic here. His bombing of an Iranian site, then telling Israel to stand down, actually seems to have prevented a larger escalation with Iran, not Gaza. It was a borderline insane strategy, but it worked surprisingly well. Trump also dramatically reduced illegal immigration, which was becoming an issue. Now, if only we could reform the system to allow more people in legally. Story 12. All right, Reddit. I am an actual Republican who held my nose and voted for Donald Trump, supported Nikki Haley in the primary. So I think this question applies to me directly. Here are some of the positives. 1. Broadcasting strength abroad. The Afghanistan withdrawal was a legitimate disgrace. The recent bombings in Iran were a projection of power to signal there is a change in how the United States will handle world affairs. 2. Illegal immigration. Since the election, illegal border crossings have plummeted. The previous administration had essentially an open border policy. My concern here is the potential for bad actors, such as foreign agents and terrorists, to enter the country and for drug trafficking crossing the border. 3. Taxes and regulations. I like lower taxes and fewer regulations. There has been a lot of progress on regulations, but I wish taxes were more transparent. The renewal of the 2017 tax bill is acceptable. Despite its imperfections, taxes would have increased without renewal. For Dogecoin, I like the idea of Dogecoin. The government debt and budget deficits are massive ticking time bombs. We have a spending problem and it needs to be addressed. The United States government could seize all wealth of the top 5 richest individuals: Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, and Warren Buffett, and that would only pay the interest on the national debt. Story 13. I think he is correct in sanctioning India for buying Russian oil. However, he does not receive much credit for that because it is the obvious thing to do, and any president would have done it. Story 14. I saw something implying that he is pressuring Apple to contribute back to the country. I think, in theory, that is long overdue. However, it does not make much sense given what else I know about him. Headlines that imply things tend to stick in people's minds more than thorough accounts of what he has actually done. Story 15. My brother, who is European, tried to tell me that Donald Trump is bad for Europe but good for America. I asked how he is good for America, and he said he is putting America first. When I asked where he got that from, he said he heard Joe Rogan say it on his podcast, so it must be true. Story 16. I think they literally want Christian fascism with one strong leader, and Donald Trump is just a vessel to achieve that goal. There are also a few other blind one-issue voters, racist, selfish people, etc. Foreign influence is significant on the internet, so you never know if you are talking with a real conservative or someone from St. Petersburg. Story 17. All politicians do good and bad things, so hating them is unreasonable unless you can provide a specific reason. I am not a fan of Donald Trump. I think he tends to create chaos from which he benefits too much, and I consider that harmful to America. I do not like that. As a weak leader, he prioritizes his own interests over the people and country he leads. However, the recent changes to the big infrastructure bill, specifically in sections 174 and 174A, fixed the significant mistakes he made with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. These changes allow American software development engineers to work again, which is very important. Additionally, if a company or project uses foreign labor, it is now taxed at a 15-year rate instead of the same year rate applied to fully domestic projects. Section 174 was broken for several years, which is why tech hiring was depressed compared to other industries. Typically, highly skilled software engineers command market rates that led companies to offshore work to save costs, despite greater quality assurance problems and increased management oversight. Now, companies face an additional 15 years of taxes if they offshore labor, as the government considers this a national security issue. The goal is for the nation to independently create technology with the necessary resources and companies. Using India for labor was never a requirement. It was falsely perceived as cheaper, because people involved did not understand the risks and costs or were misled by parties in India attempting to sell services. Many companies did not recognize the extreme security implications of this practice. Story 18. Generally, when I hear this from somebody, they have absolutely no clue about what is happening in current events. They are from an area that favors Donald Trump, and they constantly hear how great he is, so they are trying to be diplomatic with zero knowledge of the situation. Story 19. In my view, Donald Trump is the revenge fantasy that many conservative people have had for decades, made real. It is certainly more about hurting their perceived enemies than actually doing anything good for the country or even for themselves. Think of someone who really enjoys watching the movie Taken. They are not looking for a solution to the problem of sex trafficking children. They just want to watch Liam Neeson fight. Also, they tend not to be well educated on the issues, so they do not see how dangerous supporting this kind of leader can be. Story 20. Did you want actual good faith answers or Reddit echo? For example, immigration. No, hundreds of thousands of people crossing borders illegally is not good. Story 21. I do not support the man at all, but the executive order to limit drug prices was commendable, even though pharmaceutical companies ignored it. Story 22. Another "let's trick a Make America Great Again" supporter to comment, so we can jump them. We all know that any Make America Great Again comments get downvoted to oblivion. I voted Harris, but I will give a good faith defense because I do not blame Make America Great Again voters or anyone who still supports him. Here is why. 1. The budget situation is out of control. Biden was not proposing anything serious to contain it. Even if Harris had won, her plans were the same in direction as Trump's. They would still increase the deficit as a percentage of gross domestic product. Yes, Trump passed his tax cut bill, but it's far easier to reverse that than it is to introduce a new type of tax from the executive branch. In short, Trump and Harris are not that different on budget. But Trump did one thing Harris didn't. He raised taxes and created a national sales tax. The negative is he also slashed taxes on the rich. But it's now far easier to fix the budget situation. Just reverse the Trump tax cuts and keep the tariffs. He set the precedent. 2. He proved that illegal immigration was a choice. Border crossings are down because immigration and customs enforcement agents and the immigration detention system are doing exactly what they want, sending a message that people should not come here illegally because it will be enforced. Sure, the one man deported to El Salvador was a mistake in the narrow sense, but it probably prevents another 10,000 from crossing. People will praise Denmark, but Denmark has similar immigration policies. We are having to send a message because for too long we had two immigration systems, one long line for skilled immigrants and a line hopping for unskilled immigrants who could just get here and claim asylum. 3. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs are unpopular. Even polls show that liberals don't like them. The left would be best advised to let it die. There's a whole bunch on this we cannot discuss here, which is part of the problem with the platform. 4. Marijuana legalization. Democrats absolutely have this problem where they strategically decide not to make a big issue out of something they know their supporters already vote for, like Roe versus Wade. They could have codified it under Obama but decided it wasn't worth it. With marijuana, they let Trump endorse legalization before Harris did. Harris absolutely upset me with that. And I hope she never shows her face again in politics because she insulted me with her last-minute endorsement of marijuana legalization. We all know she was Attorney General and made a point to go after it right before it was legal for some reason. She has a persistent problem of not knowing where the wind is blowing. 5. Lower-class Americans have actually been hurt by globalization. Trump won't save them, but neither will the Democrats. 6. Finally, the acceleration theory makes some sense. There is strong evidence from political science that presidential systems are unstable because you have the president and Congress both claiming to speak for the people. They don't have a good track record for long-term success. What usually happens is a logjam occurs and the Constitution is broken a bit to fix it. Trump, although I hate him, is the type of personality needed to break it. He's not doing it well, but doing things like introducing new taxes from the executive branch is the type of out-of-the-box thinking needed to prevent the end. We are sinking in government debt, and the government is unable to do things that a majority agree need to be done. It's not a sustainable situation long term. If the way to break it is to break the Constitution a little, then so be it. Story 23. Donald Trump gives his supporters a feeling of superiority and relevance by vilifying imagined adversaries, thereby permitting them to become the worst version of themselves. They justify their bigotry and hate while sharing the delusion that they are the true, righteous victims unjustly persecuted by a depraved and sinful society. This is as good as it gets for them. Story 24. If people are against abortion, they can choose not to get abortions. Why do some think they need to control other people's lives? It is unreasonable. If you are not adopting children who need homes, then you should not have a vote on whether we force children to grow up unwanted. If you do not want access to pornography, do not look up pornography and teach your children healthy sexual habits rather than letting them discover sex through pornography. This is not difficult. Some people are just egotistical. Story 25. There's a short list that they usually bring up, but most fall apart upon brief inspection. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. They hate diversity, equity, and inclusion. They have no idea what it means. They think it means only hire black disabled women and similar nonsense. When you explain what diversity, equity, and inclusion is without the label, they are fine with it. Tariffs. They think tariffs are great because they believe people in other countries pay them. This is just wild ignorance. If you ask them if they support the government making everything more expensive with an import tax, they angrily oppose that, even though it is the same thing. Immigrants. They are often convinced immigration is a huge crisis, that most immigrants are illegal, that immigrants harm pets, and similar nonsense. They oppose fantasies. If you ask them how they feel about hardworking foreigners who pay taxes and are here legally, they are fine with them because they do not understand that it is the same group they accuse of crimes. Transgender people. They do not actually care about bathrooms and women's sports. They just hate transgender people. This is very similar to the immigrants topic above. It is just mindless bigotry, and Donald Trump shares it. Upsetting liberals. Some of them are so unthinking that they believe making someone upset is a good thing, even if the method is wildly objectionable. Economy. They think Donald Trump will make them richer and reduce the deficit and national debt, even though all his plans will have the opposite effect. Catching pedophiles. They have been oddly quiet about this recently, but it used to be a big deal to them before they accepted sexual abuse is acceptable if Donald Trump is involved. That covers all of them. Occasionally you encounter someone pretending to care about trivial issues, but these are the points they try to defend. Story 26. A majority of the people who voted for him are clowns who do not realize he is a con artist. He presented himself as a charismatic, funny, average guy. Therefore, a lot of people thought he was going to make great changes and be different. Yet, his entire brand was built on making huge promises and not following through on them. If anything, I feel bad for the people who support him because they still do not realize they are being misled. Story 27. Eased regulations on nuclear energy development and uranium mining and enrichment. He has made some aggressive economic moves against Russia, I believe. If we want to bring domestic manufacturing back, tariffs are one legitimate solution potentially. Although the rollout has been portrayed negatively so far, I do not know the details of the deals. Maybe the European Union deal is good. That's all I have. I personally have little respect for any United States politician I have seen. They all seem inadequate. Story 28. Illegal border crossings have dropped by approximately 95% since he took office. Whether or not immigration and customs enforcement should be deporting Mexicans while they are working on the job is one thing, but having a more secure border is generally seen as a positive by most people with common sense, on either side of the political aisle. Story 29. They believe that deporting people without due process is acceptable. These are not good people. Many supporters of former President Donald Trump hold harmful views. To them, good means maintaining strict control over their families. Story 30. This platform is predominantly liberal. Do you ask these questions just so you can agree with each other all day? Conservatives do not care about what you care about, so what is good for them is not good for you. No one cares. Story 31. I think his recent response to the invasion of Ukraine has been good, certainly better than supporting Vladimir Putin in the beginning. It is unfortunate that he is only reacting this way because Vladimir Putin has hurt his fragile ego and not because helping Ukraine is the right thing to do. Story 32. My family, who are upper middle class, is going to save around $10,000 in taxes from the changes in the Inflation Reduction Act. Story 33. They mean converting the United States into an authoritarian state because they believe they are in the group that will receive privileges. Story 34. He is going to do great things no one has ever done before. Very soon, we will see many great achievements. Story 35. Hey friend, did you see him dance like a monkey on the roof of Washington House? What else do you want? Gas is $1.99, medicine prices are down by 1,500%, and other countries are paying us trillions of dollars in tariffs. Story 36. The black bagging of brown people. No Miranda rights, no due process. They support that behavior. They say, I like what he is doing on the border, but the cruelty is a feature, not a bug. Horrible people. Story 37. Arresting undocumented people, imposing tariffs paid for by other countries, cutting programs like school lunches and public broadcasting service programming for children, make liberals sad and help Israel starve children to death. These are all considered good things by many people, even the majority. Story 38. If you are looking for rational thought, it might be hard here. We are talking about people who think rounding up immigrants and placing them in swamp camps is a good idea. Story 39. All I hear from my family is tax breaks. That's all they care about, along with the fact that they will never vote for a Democrat, socialist, communist, Marxist, or any similar candidate. My family is not well off, by the way. They are part of the declining middle class that believes they have a chance of becoming wealthy if they work really hard. Hats off to whoever's grandfather propagated the Red Scare. He did a great job. Story 40. They claim to support everything. This is the kind of statement made when there is no defense for the topic under discussion, such as his harmful actions toward children. He is not perfect, but the narrative that a specific political party is ruining the country is an opinion. Story 41. I would say a healthy side effect is that it became acceptable to talk about important issues again without fear of the mob ruining your life. We have to be able to discuss things. However, Donald Trump did not cause this directly. It happened as an unintended consequence. Trump is, of course, a complete disaster on every level. Story 42. If you are seriously asking, the first one that comes to mind is during his first term, when Donald Trump ended the Affordable Care Act's $700 income tax penalty for not having insurance. The second one is the no tax on overtime part of the Big Beautiful Bill, which I look forward to when I file my taxes next year. Story 43. Asking people on a super leftist Reddit what they like about Donald Trump is like asking sheep what they like about wolves. Here are a few things he is dealing with that are deeply unpopular everywhere except Reddit. Illegal immigrants, diversity, equity, and inclusion, transgender participation in sports, cutting government waste with Dogecoin, then increasing it with a big spending bill. World wars not as easy as he said it is. Attempt to bring manufacturing back to the United States might backfire with tariffs. Israel's support, lower taxes, fighting leftist bias in the media. He does pretty much what people elected him to do. Outside of the Epstein files, people who voted for him support what he is doing. Of course, Reddit is not a place to get an objective opinion on his policies. Story 44. I dislike everything about him, but I am glad that the presidential fitness test is returning. There is a significant obesity problem in the United States, and we should begin educating and assisting our children to overcome it. Not every action is intended to shame. Story 45. Make a list of good points. Even his actions towards undocumented immigrants are not good. He is treating them inhumanely. The treatment they are receiving is wrong. Story 46. This is my aunt and uncle who are very intelligent people and have white-collar jobs. I was shocked. Oh, and we are Canadian. Story 47. I'm finding the whole, actually illegal immigration is a civil penalty, not a crime argument is really putting a sour taste in people's mouths, regardless of their political leanings. There are no other civil infractions where one of your punishments is being put in a holding cell and then sent to another country. Story 48. I think people are giving the Republican Party too much credit. The real power lies with influential figures like Rupert Murdoch and the Koch brothers, who have built a massive conservative media ecosystem that aligns with Republican interests. Over time, the party has attracted some of the most greed-driven, power-hungry individuals. Even some Democratic politicians quietly support certain Republican policies when it benefits them financially, even if they do not publicly endorse them. That is part of why Republicans are able to push through so much legislation. Story 49. If I may add my perspective, I am neither Republican nor Democrat, but rather libertarian, not a member of either the Alliance or Mises. I am from Alabama. There was a lot of discussion among those in the Libertarian Party this past cycle, partially because he appeared at our national convention. Some of us felt he could do some good, and many were truly excited when Ross Ulbricht was freed. I was a little excited myself when Massey and Salatin were possible candidates for leading the United States Department of Agriculture. Naturally, that did not happen. Donald Trump seems to be a master at holding carrots just out of reach and then doing whatever he wants. He has evangelical Christians and many Jewish people wrapped around his finger right now. I do not know how much he actually wanted conflict in the Levant. This may be one carrot he had to grant to keep those groups close to him. Generally, however, he plays with constituents like chess pieces. I am currently of the opinion that whatever benefits his administration has for the people is merely a side effect of whatever power play he is making at the moment. Story 50. Nobody cares about the good things he does. We still do not like him, and he is still a criminal. The only reason he is in office is because the man is rich. Story 51. If you are wealthy, it is beneficial that you are paying fewer taxes or may avoid tax evasion because the Internal Revenue Service does not have enough staff to audit you. Story 52. These individuals do not favor anyone except white people in their country. They oppose paying for welfare and do not want their high income taxed more. They are against anything related to transgender issues. A Republican president could essentially win over voters with these positions alone. These voters are so committed to these ideals that they will ignore and even defend every objectionable action taken by Donald Trump. Story 53. I don't understand why supporters of the Make America Great Again movement do not move to Russia. It already embodies everything they advocate for. Story 54. There was a lot wrong with the big, beautiful bill, but the tax exemption on overtime is going to help many middle-class workers. It will save me several $1,000s a year. I also think he is right about the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and Europe. I do not care to be a global superpower. They can defend their own borders. Story 55. Americans would rather have a person of color suffer than actually improve their country. These individuals persist in their racism and harmful worldview. Story 56. I like how angry he makes the terminally online people. It is very entertaining. Keep up the good work, Donald Trump. Story 57. They made people feel okay for being angry and racist, and made them feel normal for wanting to lash out and hurt others. The end. Story 58. I voted for Kamala Harris, but I liked many of Donald Trump's promises. If he actually acts on them, I will support him. Ending the Ukraine war as soon as possible. A trade policy that will bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. More technology jobs for Americans. No tax on tips or overtime. Free in vitro fertilization. Lowering prescription drug prices by as much as 1,500%. Lowering and fixing gas and egg prices. Releasing the Epstein files. Story 59. I do not support Donald Trump and did not vote for him. However, I believe that illegal immigration issues have been ignored for far too long. I also think that excessive political correctness went too far. Even a stopped clock is right twice a day. Story 60. For those who fall into this rationalization and for the sake of argument, let us say he has accomplished something good. I ask you, at what cost? Unless they are a billionaire or a corporation, it is hard for me to see how this is working in their favor. Story 61. The real answer is that people have given him credit for any good economic times that occurred between 2017 and 2019. It is not correct to fully attribute that to him, and it conveniently leaves out the year right after, but that is often what people mean when they say that. Story 62. Trump signed the Take It Down Act. I can name other things, but as someone else has said, it really depends on your worldview as to what you mean by good. Story 63. Whenever an actual conservative answers, it receives downvotes and endless bad faith follow-up questions. No one genuinely wants to hear the answers, just a target to shout at. Look at the people who mention the border. They just get piled on by others who refuse to acknowledge the negatives associated with mass unchecked immigration. Story 64. It is usually beneficial for a specific group, often corporations, wealthy individuals, or ideological conservatives, and not necessarily for the broader working class or vulnerable populations. Story 65. The main issue with the question is that the definition of a good thing varies significantly between people. For example, I had a conversation with someone who was trying to explain how building himself a golden ballroom is a good thing. Story 66. It genuinely baffles me that people see Donald Trump congratulate individuals like Lawrence Taylor, a convicted person, and say, "Yeah, that guy represents me." What is the standard, to be honest? It feels non-existent. It is hard to say you care about morals when Donald Trump is your prized figure, supposedly. Story 67. Every person you know who voted for former President Trump is a racist individual. They are not redeemable. They want to hurt black and brown people because they hate them. That is it. It has been 10 years. You should know this by now. They would rather destroy the country than see a black or brown person live a decent life. That is who they are. Story 68. He has made it so racists are not afraid to show how racist they are, exposing them for the piece of that they are. I guess that is a good thing. Story 69. What I hear when I talk to them is mostly about auditing spending, deporting illegal immigrants, and being anti-woke. That said, I do not encounter vocal diehard supporters of Donald Trump, just people who prefer him to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Barack Obama. I am somewhat of a mirror of that. I think both parties have been captured by wealthy special interests, and we need an alternative to address the most urgent issue, the ongoing class war that we are all losing. Story 70. The only two good things Donald Trump has done in 8 months. 1. Eliminated the penny. 2. Demonstrated how corrupt and powerless members of Congress are. Story 71. Protecting children by stopping Munchausen by proxy mothers from harming their children for social or virtue points was beneficial. Protecting women's sports was also important. Other than that, I have no further comments. Additionally, immigration raids need to be curbed and reconsidered. Story 72. I don't support Donald Trump, but I'm a fairly left-leaning moderate from a conservative upbringing in Los Angeles, raised by 2 parents from New York City, so not exactly your Bible Belt. I'll share some things they agree with and some things I've agreed with. I find him deplorable, and they find him to be a crass-talking New Yorker. General opposition to the entrenched Democratic establishment that had worked its way into appointed positions of power in federal agencies. This was a big issue for my dad. He was a hippie and worked for the Democrats in the 1970s. He found them to be incredibly corrupt and manipulative, and it's what turned him away from the party. Immigration was getting out of control. They like that the roundups are happening. They have issues with the process but think you need to get everybody out and then provide an easier path to immigration. They have supported a sales tax over an income tax. Tariffs are kind of like adding a sales tax. They know the taxpayer pays it but think it will eventually lead to reduced income and capital gains taxes. My dad does not believe in global warming. This is only because he's stubborn. He's seen the studies and is generally intelligent. But admitting he's wrong and I'm right does not compute, so he'll stick to his position on this. What I somewhat agree with, gender-affirming care went too far with too little actual science. I 100% believe people identify with another gender. I also 100% believe that a portion of these people, not all, are probably suffering from psychological issues. We jumped right to the most extreme treatment being taken too early for how little we know without asking if we're treating the underlying condition. We need more science here, and it was becoming stigmatized to even question if there were underlying issues that could be treated in less extreme ways. For many people, even in the second group, the treatment that lets them get along with their life may be the best option. But I have a hard time believing that's the case in all situations. And doing it at a young age before the brain is fully developed gives me pause. There were times I felt I was the wrong gender growing up, and I know I don't feel that today. We need science and not politics to guide us here. I have friends who are openly transgender who agree with me on this issue too, including some who regretted their decision, others who are thrilled with theirs, and some who think they would have liked to try something different. I just don't want our desire for political correctness and inclusiveness to get in the way of better understanding the science. Story 73. They probably think arresting civilians who are not breaking the law because they are brown or black is a good thing he does. Republican voters are racist, and no amount of pretending otherwise will change that. Story 74. Come on, man, you know the answer to this. It is racism. They are never going to admit it, but the fact is he makes it acceptable to hate brown people in public again. Immigration is the only issue he pulls highly on. Story 75. I appreciate the question opening a dialogue. I am also glad he is pressuring Europe to pay for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I do not see how it makes sense for America to fund European security more than Europe funds itself. I deeply resent woke ideology. It seems like a strange parody of different ideologies in a South Park episode. I am glad America decided firmly it does not want that, and Donald Trump has been leading the charge on it. As an Israeli, I am glad he is putting pressure on Hamas, not Israel. Anytime countries pressure Israel, Hamas does not want to negotiate since it only gains from further conflict and casualties. It is a terrorist organization. This is a subject on which Kamala Harris did not notice what she was doing. Pressuring Hamas gives me hope we may somehow find a solution without keeping them in charge of Gaza. Anyone who thinks there will be lasting peace otherwise has not been following the situation. Story 76. Racist, transphobic, and anti-poor sentiments are present. Donald Trump is turning America into an authoritarian regime, and conservatives view that favorably. Story 77. He is constantly revealing the true nature of the United States and exposing its corrupt core. He is accelerating the decline of the United States. These two actions outweigh many of the negative things he is responsible for. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.